So first we will talk about the Data Act. Anna is going to do that, and I will talk about the Cyber Resilience Act, which also addresses cyber risks from IoT products.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, so my name is Anna Haapanen. Happy to be here in Amsterdam at this IFCLA conference. 2 years ago we had IFCLA conference in Helsinki. I was one of the persons hosting the conference there. I'm partner with Dietmar Tinrenius, heading their technology practice, having been practicing technology law in different countries for 20 years now. We will continue on the data team, whereas the former presentation handled or covered online platforms and personal data and also competition laws. Now we will look at the data a little bit from different perspective in the IoT context. So let's move on. So, and also as opposed to looking at the case law, we will now take a look at the very important regulatory developments, one of them being Data Act, already entered into force and now governs data in the IoT context. So it's important to understand that when we discuss data, it's just not personal data. There's also, like, data can include a lot of different types of data. In addition to personal data, data could include trade secrets, other confidential information subject to different kinds of contractual restrictions, NDAs and other types of confidentiality clauses. And in addition to that, there is industrial data, meaning data that is collected by sensors in the, for example, industrial context or otherwise, and then might not be none of or fit into none of these categories, meaning personal data or trade secrets, but could also include them. So kind of it's very good to bear now the big picture in mind when we go deeper looking at the Data Act. All right, so the Data Act, it already entered into force in January this year, but it will be applied as of September 2025, meaning there's a little bit more than 1 year to get prepared. And this is a really big thing for all device makers, whether the device makers manufacture devices for B2B purposes or consumer devices. Data Act concerns mandatory regulations on sharing data of those IoT devices. So let's take a deeper look at this regulation. So there's a lot of different elements in the Data Act. Now we will concentrate on the mandatory provisions regarding sharing of data of connected products and related services. So the Data Act, it's a horizontal regulation in the sense that it applies to all IoT devices horizontally. It doesn't matter whether the question is of a factory or a wellness watch. All IoT devices are within the scope of this act. But it's also like a very kind of, how to say, to the point act in the sense that it only concerns these connected products and related services. It doesn't concern any and all data. It doesn't concern the data of online platforms unless the question is of data processing services within the scope of application. All right, so this is the basic ecosystem in the Data Act. There's a data holder, could also be device maker of connected product, IoT product, also other than IoT products, any type of connected product and related service. And when the data holder sells or leases or rents its connected product to a customer, be it in the kind of B2B context or B2C context, the user will have a right to get its own data, meaning the data that use of the connected product generates while using the product. to itself for free. So this is huge thing. So whereas until so far, kind of the device makers have had control over the data because technically the data has been stored in their systems and in their devices. But now this Data Act will shift the whole kind of negotiation power in terms of data, because there will be these mandatory provisions regarding sharing of the data. And this is not all. Another huge thing in the Data Act is that all the users, be it the user of a paper machine in a factory, in industrial setting, or user of an electric car, like myself, the users will be entitled to give the data to any third party whatsoever for any legal purpose. For example, for providing repair or maintenance services for that particular device that the user owns or rents, or to provide some other value-added services for the user. So and in the global context, this applies to products, connected products and services that are marketed in the EU, but irrespective of whether the kind of the seller or device maker is a EU corporation. It could also be or has the like corporate structure elsewhere outside of the EU. But the user in the EU is allowed to also give the data to any third party, irrespective of whether the third party is in the EU or for example, the States or Asia. So the purpose of the whole Data Act is to kind of boost the European Union's data strategy and get the data flow freely in the Union, but obviously also outside of the Union. This is what happens because of the user's powers. All right, so just to clarify, connected products are in the scope. Connected products meaning not only IoT products, meaning products connected to internet, but also products that are otherwise connected, such as via physical connection, cable, meaning, or on-device access. And such products, the primary function of which is not only storing of the data on behalf of a third party. So what's included? All things intelligent, basically. Smart watches, electric cars, refrigerators, industrial machines, all kinds of vehicles. These days, almost everything is connected, a product. If we think of hardware, it's probably a connected product. They are included. And not only the products, but also related services. So if we think of from consumer perspective, a car, there's a connected service, for example, a mobile app that is used for charging the car. That's most likely a related service of a connected product. All the data, for example, my personal charging data, or the data of my wellness device, be it a watch or a ring or whatnot, the data generated by use of such connected product or related service is my own data under the Data Act, and I'm allowed to get it. This is kind of, I think this is easier to grasp for consumer device makers, but when we think of the industrial setting, there's a lot of discussion with public corporations, global corporations on, do they really have to share their own data to all the users and via the users, even to third parties and even outside of the EU? Yes, they will have to do that as of September 2025. And then the next question is, what data then must be shared? Well, obviously, product data and service data, which include raw data and data that's processed to some extent, and also related metadata. And the concerning part is obviously, what about trade secrets? What about personal information, personal data? They will need to be shared as well. And then the question is how to do it in compliance with trade secret legislation and the GDPR that we just discussed. Well, the data not only needs to include trade secrets and personal data, but it has to be given to the users free of charge, easily, securely, and in a comprehensive, structured manner, and upon the user's request, directly from the device, which will of course then also possibly require some technical changes to the product architecture. And then if not possible to give it directly from the device, then upon the user's request from the cloud service. Then if possible in real time and continuously. Yeah. And as said, even if that data that is subject to the data sharing obligation would include trade secrets, the starting point is that they need to be given to users, and users will have the right to give that even trade secrets to third parties, even outside of the EU. So this is a huge thing, and therefore, unless you haven't heard of this regulation yet, and you're advising technology companies, now it's the high time to get prepared. Trade secrets would need to be identified, easier said than done in practice. And then there should be technical and organizatory measures to protect the trade secrets between the parties, meaning NDAs and technical means, maybe encryption and other means when the data is then given to users. And the users will have the right to give those trade secrets for third parties if it's necessary for the purpose of achieving the kind of purpose for which the data is given to the third party in the first place. So if I give, for example, in the B2B context, data to a third party for the purpose of for example, maintaining a device, then if certain trade secrets in the data are needed for that support and maintenance purpose, they will need to be given to the third party. And there are very limited ways in the Data Act to actually oppose or discontinue provision of trade secrets to users and third parties. So it definitely will not be easy to circumvent this legislation. There are certain exceptions, but if you wish to use them, you will always need to inform the national authorities of the discontinuation or the suspension of transferring the trade secrets. Not an easy process. So better get prepared for actually also giving the trade secrets. Also some other cases where data may need to be disclosed to public authorities as well. Perhaps less concerning because they are not obviously used for commercial purposes, but for kind of in this kind of force majeure type of situations. And then also there will be other types of regulations or provisions in the regulation, not only concerning the IoT products themselves or the connected products and related services, but in all providers of data processing services, meaning cloud services, different types of cloud services. They also will need to adapt to the new requirements of the Data Act, which require that if the user of those cloud services want to change the service provider or take the services to the internal IT infrastructure, they will have the right to do so easily by getting their own data for free in that context and get transfer assistance for actually enforcing that right. And then in the interest of time, I will be very, very short, but there will be different types of agreements that will need to be then implemented in the ecosystem in the first slide that you saw. with different parties. So obviously device makers will need to have agreements in place with users that conform to the requirements of the Data Act, and also data holders will need to have agreements with third parties if the user requests the device maker or data holder to give the data directly to the third party. And also obviously users and third parties will need to have their own agreements in place in compliance with the Data Act. And then finally, when we think of the cloud services, obviously a different element than the IoT products, that also all the cloud services will need to be adapted, or their agreements will need to be adapted to comply with the Data Act's requirements. Yeah, effectively means huge contractual limitations. So to a certain extent, the freedom of contract still prevails, but now the agreements will need to be compliant with the Data Act as of next September 2025. And then obviously a lot of GDPR issues. So funnily enough, Data Act requires device makers to give personal data to users, but it does not give the right to do so, because the right to do so, the legitimate interest or another ground for transferring personal data must be found from the GDPR. So very strange scenario. How to get prepared? I would advise all device makers identify their connected products and related services, think how they collect data right now, and then ensure that the data is then given in compliance with the Data Act to all users and third parties, also by updating the agreements simultaneously.
Then, ask a question?
Sure.
My name is Benno Bij. I'm a tech lawyer at BDO in the Netherlands. I've got the tail, I guess. So your advice is every, let's say, device connected supplier should prepare, but do you have an insight on which markets might be, let's say, hit first? Is there any, so like automotive, or do you?
All markets hit simultaneously, and that's I think it was 25th of September. It doesn't mean, there's no difference of what markets. This is a horizontal regulation.
Yeah.
All, every and all the device makers, irrespective of the business field, will need to be compliant as of September 2025. Yeah, and all that are concerned of trade secrets then will kind of be hit in the sense that that will be a challenge to them.
And if I may, if you have a question to the non-EU people, I know that Canadian people are around, is this something that is, let's say, top of mind that Europe is, by the way, creating a whole lot of legislation that's relevant for us here anyway, but is this something that you are aware of that you like for instance? Nothing?
No, we don't have an equivalent, nor do we have one thing.
Okay, but if your clients are in this industry and they want to step foot in Europe, then
Paying attention, I tend to.
you have my number. No, okay, sorry, thanks.
Or my number, by the way. Yeah, there was a question as well.
Robert Barney from Privacy Partnership Law in London. Yeah, I was actually about 3 months ago, I had a US-based manufacturer of printers who was getting due diligence questions from retailers over here and in the UK as to what compliance statements have you got to comply with our UK equivalent of this. So yeah, it is happening.
Mm. Yeah. And in Finland, there has been a lot of discussion on this regulation for now almost 2 years. Since we got the first proposal for the regulation, now at the turn of the year, or right before it, we got the final version. But I read all of the versions and know the differences in the, yeah, there's a lot of discussion on this. This is a huge thing. Yeah. And here's my number.
issues on the IoT, on the cybersecurity issues. There's some legislations coming up and that will be applying very soon. And the IoT that are not respecting some of the legislation on cybersecurity may risk to lose their EC label, so the right to be imported into Europe. So if outside Europe they are not aware of it, please do follow the cybersecurity issues coming up.
Yeah, and we'll now actually continuing on that particular subject.
Coming
Yeah,
up next.
yeah.
Thank you for the brilliant introduction.